Happy Monday, everyone. This is Martha with Nature Niche. And this week, I want to bring you another lovely composite species in the Asteraceae family, or the Aster and Daisy family, black-eyed Susan, Rudbeckia hirta. This is a native perennial forb that you can find all across the state of Michigan, both upper and lower peninsula, and across most of the United States and Canada as well. It's one of five Rudbeckia species that are native to Michigan, and it is the most common. It has a coefficient of conservatism of 1, so not very indicative of like pre-European settlement, relatively undisturbed ecosystems. It really is good at colonizing disturbed sites. So there's the wetter and taller cutleaf coneflower, Rudbeckia laciniata, three-lobed coneflower, Rudbeckia triloba, and the showy coneflower, also known as black-eyed Susan, Rudbeckia fulgida. Those are all different species that tend to be found along river floodplains, wet prairies, fens, sedge meadows, shores, little wetter places, swampier ground. And then there's the extirpated sweet coneflower, Rudbeckia subtomentosa. So the most common species, Rudbeckia hirta. That's why we like to use scientific names, because there could be confusion with the lots of black-eyed Susan common name. It likes all kinds of drier sites, so you can find it in fields, roadsides, railroad, and other utility rights of way, clearings, fence rows, jack pine, aspen, and pine or oak savannas, prairies, fens, sedge meadows, shores, and basically other places where you have sandy, rocky openings like gravel and other kinds of borrow pits. It really is a good colonizer of disturbed sites, and it recovers pretty well following fire. So as far as culture goes, Rudbeckia hirta prefers full sun and moist to dry, well-drained soils. This is not something that's going to do well in wet, soggy, and super, super rich sites. It does tend to mature pretty quickly, and it's easy to grow. It's one of the first things I see germinating out of native seed mixes, and you can actually use it at a higher ratio as an alternative cover crop because it gets growing so quickly when you're doing a native seed mix. It is relatively short-lived, and it needs disturbance and dried soil. You can see we're in the back demonstration dry sand prairie at my store in Midland, Michigan. And this is like a leftover sand mound from the construction of US 10 behind us. It's really droughty, sandy soil. I have plenty of bare ground left, and this species does well reseeding itself. It can sometimes act as an annual and flower on those first year plants and then die and not come back, or as a biennial, so putting up those rosette of leaves, flowering the second year, and then dying back and having to basically stay in a planting by being able to reseed itself. Otherwise, if you have it in a place where there's more competing vegetation, not a lot of bare ground, it's pretty moist, you'll find that this will peter out of a planting, get out competed, not be able to reseed itself. And especially in the fall, it can get outbreaks of powdery mildew in pretty moist environments. So give this species a good dry site. It is a complex and variable species. There are common cultivars, especially a large tetraploid known as Gloriosa daisy. And the raised flowers are rarely bicolored. And it's known to be relatively tolerant of juglone, which is the chemical that's secreted by the root system of black walnut and other juglans. So it is something that if you're trying to plant wildflowers under a black walnut, this is a good species to try. And it's often planted for its drought tolerance and its deer resistance. It is an awfully hairy plant that the deer tend not to like the texture of. As far as identification goes, it gets only 1 to about 2.5 feet tall, so on the lower side of height for our native plants. It can branch near the base, and each of the pretty hairy stems terminate in a single composite flower. So the stems are covered in these nice, soft, white hairs. The leaves are alternating along the stem, and the leaves themselves are covered by a lot of short, stiff hairs. If you can see that against my finger there, but very fuzzy leaves, giving it a rough texture, and that helps protect the species against mammalian herbivory. The leaves can get up to 7 inches long and 2 inches across. They tend to be lance shaped all the way to ovate, and the margins are very ciliate, meaning hairy, so they have a hairy margin, usually entire or smooth. They can occasionally have a coarse, blunt tooth up to a few teeth, but I think that's more the exception than the rule. And as the leaves come up the stem, so the basal leaves, most of these have died back already, have a stalk, a petiole. And as they ascend up the stem, that petiole gets shorter to the point where the leaves at the very top are just directly clasping the stem. So the flowers of Rudbeckia hirta are this bright, sunny color. They are 2 to 3 inches across. There is a grouping of the dark brown disc florets that are the shape of a flattened cone. So this is the eye of black-eyed Susan, and it's surrounded by 8 to 20 bright yellow ray florets that can occasionally have some maroon color at their base. This species blooms in June into October. In the storefront here, I actually had some last year blooming into November, which was a nice cheerful surprise at the store. But generally a colony will bloom for about a month. The seeds are very tiny. They're black, oblong, finely nerved, sepsella that don't have any hair on them. So you can collect them. I would wait at least 3 to 4 weeks after the flowers have faded. You can definitely wait longer than that and let the cone kind of dry out, loosen up. It'll be easier to get the seeds that way. You can, if you don't like how it's spreading or want it to spread, you can deadhead to help keep it from reseeding itself. But I prefer to plant it where we want it to recolonize, spread, and I like having the seed heads with the seeds available for my native birds. As far as faunal associates go, this is a great pollinator plant. It attracts bees and flies, butterflies, wasps, beetles, and it offers pollen and nectar to those species. It's great for little carpenter bees, leaf cutter bees, green metallic bees, and some of the adrenid bees are actually specialists on Rudbeckia flowers. So it is also the host plant for silvery checker spot, Gorgon checker spot, and bordered patch butterflies. And it's not very palatable to mammals because of all those, all the hairs on the stems and the leaves. There have been, I guess, a few reports of pigs and cattle eating a fair bit of it and having some poisoning effects. So keep it away from those animals. But the granivorous birds, like our American goldfinches, love the seeds. So I love having this out in the planting, knowing that I'm naturally feeding some of my native bird species as well. So I would just encourage you not to ignore this plant species just because it's common. As you get into wildflower plantings, you might write it off as, oh, it's just black-eyed Susan, but it's an important pollinator plant and important for supporting our wild birds. It's great to use in prairie restorations, those tough, dry sites that are hard to get things to grow. It's great the first year in wildflower plantings because it can sometimes flower that first year from seed. And it's great in areas that get disturbed on a regular basis. I have it seeded along my sidewalk and the parking area at the store where the snowplow tends to tear things up, and I want a plant that can reseed and reestablish itself well. Plus, it provides cheerful, bright color in late spring through summer, and sometimes actually quite a bit into the fall. So I hope you come see this plant in our demo prairie at the back of the store and consider using it in your own native landscapes. Take care. Have a good week.